So in this video here, I see a 3-story wood frame private dwelling, fire coming out of the 3rd floor. But what the flames tell us is what has already happened. We need to focus on the smoke so we can understand what's going to happen.
Our guest is PJ Norwood, Director of Training at Connecticut Fire Academy. He serves on FSRI's Training Advisory Committee. He co-founded Stop Believing, Start Knowing, and he co-wrote the evolving Fireground. The guy knows his stuff. This interview is for firefighters who want to learn more about how to use exterior water without losing aggression, nozzle choice in interior attack, how water mapping can give you a more efficient interior push, and how to overcome low staffing operations. All right, so this is really exciting. Today we have PJ Norwood from the Connecticut Fire Academy. We had an absolute blast on Fully Involved, and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for what you do to support the fire service, to give us the tools and equipment that we need to do our job successfully. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Connecticut Fire Academy and film some of these great episodes there.
You're the type of guy who you're not going to draw a lot of attention yourself, but I know that you've got a good sense of humor. And I know there are things that irritate you about tactics that are out there in the fire service. What are you really passionate about? What do you feel like is one of the most misunderstood tactics that you are on a mission to just help shed light on?
So the direction I want to take this is not necessarily the specific tactics, but it's our understanding of tactics. I was trained in the late 80s, early 90s by World War II firefighters who were teaching us a very different fire at that time. And those are the tactics that I deployed, those are the tactics that I used very successfully for many, many years. But the environment has changed, and how we need to go about our business has changed. It doesn't mean that what we've been doing was wrong, it just means we need to change. Our EMS partners of the fire service, they change the standards for EMS and for CPR every year. And every firefighter's like, okay, they changed the standard again, we'll do it different. We're not doing it 5-to-1 anymore. We're not doing the head tilt chin lift anymore, and it's okay. But as soon as we start to mention a change in our tactics, firefighters get all upset. And they get all really disappointed, and it creates this divide, right? And these arguments and the debates. Well, the debates are good, because that's that swing of the pendulum, right? Until we figure out where it actually needs to be. But I think today's firefighters need to understand that we're not fighting the same fire that we were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, nor should our tactics be exactly the same. It doesn't mean we should throw out our tactics. It means that we need to adopt those tactics to the new environment. And it gets extremely frustrating when we have some amazing professional firefighters, whether career or volunteer, doing some amazing work to say in their communities, but yet they're not willing to look at the research, to understand the research, and learn how they can apply it better to their community for those that they're served, that they've sworn to protect.
So what's one example, some low-hanging fruit that you're like, you know what, guys, why don't we just make this one change? What's one example of what you just explained?
Yes, so, one example, I don't think it's as controversial anymore, but is exterior water. When we start talking about, modern tactics and research-based tactics, and we started to teach about exterior water, you would have thought the world was coming to an end, right? Because we're not going to be aggressive firefighters anymore. We're not going to be able to go through the front door. And that's not the case, right? Exterior water is not for every fire. Depending on your department, depending on your resources, depending on the building construction, you may never utilize exterior water. However, it needs to be an option that you could default to when the right timing and the right situation, because it's only going to do good. Keith Stakes from FSRI recently said on a podcast, the wetter the better. And the fire doesn't know where the water's coming from. The goal of extinguishment is what? To get water into that environment as quick as possible. It doesn't matter if it's through a door, through a window, or down the hallway.
Why is exterior water application something that firefighters should kind of pay attention to? Just why is it something that you're passionate about?
Because water makes everything better. When we go back to our basic fire behavior education, we have the fire tetrahedron. And there's only one real way as firefighters that we can impact that, and that's cooling the environment. Yes, we can decrease the amount of air we let into the building, but we can't go up and put an envelope or a balloon around the building and take out all the oxygen, right? So water is the key thing for us. we have to get that into the environment. And there's a lot of firefighters that are concerned about that tactic. They're concerned because they've always been taught the negative side of it. And there's no negative, right? There's a right way to do it and a specific way to do it, but there's nothing negative. It's only positive for the environment.
Tell me about what equipment choices you like to make. Some people with exterior water application, they're all about the deck gun. Some people prefer to use the ground monitor, smoothbore, fog. Just tell me about the different decisions that you advocate for when you're choosing equipment on transitional attack or external water.
It's actually interesting you bring up exterior water and the blitz attack, right? That was something I was trained on. It was always acceptable and was okay. And doing a little research with some Chicago firefighters, we found that was actually originated in Chicago in 1976. And they started applying it in the 80s in Chicago. And growing up, that's an accepted practice. Use the deck gun, do a blitz attack, flood the building with water until you can get your hand lines in place. So it was okay to flow all those GPMs from a deck gun from the exterior, but it wasn't okay to flow 150 gallons per minute from an 1 3/4 hose line. Those are the things that I don't understand. So as far as equipment, you want a smoothbore or straight stream. You don't want to use fog. When you're applying that water, you don't want to move that nozzle around. You want to keep it tight in that window, steep, steady, and then seconds until that environment starts changing.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to pause for the bagpipes.
Yep.
You're doing great, though. Keep
All
it
right.
up. Yeah. You had some really interesting comments about the equipment choice. Walk us through what different equipment choices you have to make when you're choosing your, let's say, first arriving tactics package.
So when we start talking about equipment and thinking about first arriving tactics, my focus would be, depending on your crew size and the resources available, how can you deploy your equipment the quickest and get water on the fire? Whether that's a deck gun, whether that's an 1 3/4 hand line, right? That's going to be really dependent on your engine company and your secondary resources. And the thing that we also see often is many policies and procedures have the first two engine stopping at a hydrant, wrapping at a hydrant, then going in. That takes minutes. Many fires today don't require that much water application if you're doing it right. So I like to advocate now, first two engine, go to the fire, start flowing water, get that water flowing as quickly as possible into that environment. And depending on your resources, depending on your crew makeup, right, make the best choices to get your equipment there the quickest that you can. If you're choosing exterior water, smoothbore or straight stream, right? You don't want to use fog. You want to keep that nozzle, that stream pattern tight. You don't want to be moving it around because you want to entrain as little air as you can into that environment.
Interesting. So what do you, what kind of pushback is there when you say, okay, smoothbore is the best for exterior? What do you say to people? Are there any fog advocates out there?
I don't believe there's any fog advocates when we start talking about exterior water. I think that dispute has been, kind of dispelled.
Uh-huh.
I think the dispute between smoothbore and combination fog tack will probably always exist for interior firefighting.
Uh-huh.
But when we're talking about research-based tactics and exterior water, the fire service would say truly understands the difference.
One of my favorite parts about our visit to CFA was talking about water mapping. Tell me about your passion for teaching the art of water mapping.
Yeah, thanks for that question, right? So in my fire service career, we've always studied, researched, and learned everything we can about water from the reservoir to the nozzle. And that's where it ended. Everything in between, the pumps, the hose, the water distribution system, the fire hydrants, right? But we've never looked at what happens to the water once it leaves the nozzle. When it leaves that nozzle, what's the positive effects, but what's also the negative effects, right? Where's the water going, right? Does it matter if you do a T, Z, or an O pattern? How much air are you entraining? And how you place that stream into the room matters to make sure that you're getting the water to where you need it with the least amount of water possible, and also something we never considered, the least amount of stress on us and the least amount of energy. If we can reduce our energy in water delivery, we're reducing our air consumption, which means we could push farther. And when you start looking at departments that are strapped as far as staffing, and they don't have big staffing, we need to figure out how we can do our jobs better and go further on the air that we have.
What's the most misunderstood part of water mapping?
I think the most misunderstood part on water mapping is doesn't mean we're keeping you outside. Right? Water mapping is just a tool. It's an understanding. It's a knowledge. It's not a tactic, right? Water mapping is not a tactic. It's a knowledge base that helps drive your tactics.
Interesting. Do you have a personal preference for nozzle choice on interior tack?
Smoothbore. And I say
you said that with no hesitation.
With no hesitations. Smoothbore or really tight, compact, straight stream. Because I want to introduce the least amount of air through air entrainment into my environment.
How big of a concern is water droplet size? Some people are all about talking about the size of water droplets. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much does that matter to you?
For me, I'm not a water nerd, so I'm not overly concerned about that. I just want that really tight stream package.
You mentioned low staffing solutions. That's something that every fire department in the world is facing, is just how do we get more with the resources that we have, whether a huge department or a tiny department. What's another clever way that you would advocate for overcoming a personnel issue?
Well, I don't want this to come across as I think we should cut staffing or responding and performing firefighting with reduced staffing, because we need all the staffing that we can get. Every fire department doesn't have enough staffing. Right. So I don't want anybody to misconstrue that. Yeah. I'm saying, well, we can do more with less, right? We have to do what we have to do with what we have, but it should always be more. But making sure that you understand building construction, understanding the environment, knowing where to charge your line, where to apply water. And those low staff departments really need to consider utilizing exterior water in the right time, in the right place, and the right way, because it will help them with their interior operations. And ultimately, it's going to help the potential victims.
Do you get ground monitors? That's one area that I've heard some departments they love, like the set and forget it sort of philosophy. How do you teach exposure protections or other ground monitor situations?
Yep. So in my department, my engine companies, we'd only run 2-person engine companies. So for us, we utilized mounted deck guns or mounted monitors. Very rarely would we put in place a ground monitor unless we're setting up elevated master streams. However, in my district, we're right on Long Island Sound. A lot of small cottages, a lot of big modern homes that are right on top of each other. So when you start looking at the modern home and the amount of radiant heat and how quickly fire moves through these homes, the real potential exists to lose multiple homes, especially when they're going to be wind impacted. Because anything more than 10 miles an hour wind is going to be wind impacted. So the utilization of ground monitors, especially in those environments, to get that ground monitor in place to do some of that exposure protection while you stretch your hand lines, while you start putting in place your interior operations, is critical. Because again, the wetter the better, so you have to get those lines into place. And in some areas, you can't reach that from the street from your mounted deck gun.
Every now and again, you can't get enough water out of a hand line, whether it's a smoothbore or a combination nozzle. Sometimes you just need more punch on arrival. I'm Paul Neely at Task Force Tips. I'd like to talk to you today about the blitz fire. Why would you not want 86 degrees of attack angle? If you're limited to only 50 degrees, you may not be able to make that second story or third story window based on your close proximity of the monitor to the building. This could be the difference between completing a rescue or making a body recovery.
Yeah, I would love to hear more about your response district. Can you kind of give me the back of the baseball card, as it were? Can you just tell me everything from the size, the building construction, the type of situations you face? Just what are the ABCs of your response district?
Yeah, thank you. That's another great question, because I think that I worked in a very unique district. We're only 12.6 square miles. We had Long Island Sound, bordering one of the largest ports in the state of Connecticut, the New Haven Harbor. We have a regional airport. We have Amtrak for both passenger and cargo. I-95, the traditional light manufacturing and small light warehouses, plus your bedroom communities, your nursing homes, your strip malls, your private dwellings of 1-story, 2-story, 3 woods, balloon frame 3 woods. So what was great about the place that I worked, we had a little bit of everything. And our north section of town was very rural, some horse farms, some cow farms. So you go from everything from, downtown Main Street with strip malls to large homes right along the water, all the way up to the rural section of our town in just 12.6 square miles.
But I'm sure you've got endless stories, but just what's one problem that you encountered that was really memorable?
one major problem was staffing. We'd respond to fires on Main Street in East Haven, and we would go to one of the last couple of houses in the town. It'd be a 2.5 or 3 wood frame, balloon frame house with 12 firefighters, thankfully supplemented by our volunteers. The very next house in the city of New Haven, built maybe the same day or the same week, 20 to 30 firefighters on the initial alarm. Right, so what my firefighters did and what I did for many years is amazing feats of effort to do the job for those in our community. And we put ourselves in places that we probably shouldn't because of the staffing issues that many departments face.
Was there one particular fire you can remember that really stands out from the rest, or one particular time where you were by yourself or anything like that? Just what was the stickiest situation you found yourself in?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you two.
Okay,
so
yeah.
The stickiest situation was we're at a 2 wood. My partner and I, there was no rescue. They weren't coming. It was black fire, blacked out conditions. We're on the first floor. And I said, listen, I'm going to do a search of the second floor because we would split, breaking every rule possible. You don't want to break up your team, but we needed to split. And he said, well, you better keep low because it's getting hotter and hotter. We thought it was going to flash on us, but it's splitting your crew size. And I joke now that I've stretched more lines and searched more houses by myself than with ever anybody before. And then the other sticky, not necessarily a sticky situation, but one of the most challenging one is we had a plane crash. We had a private jet crash into 2 private dwellings just outside of the airport property.
Wow.
So we lost
2
victims from within the plane, and we lost 2 young children, 2 young girls from the house that it struck. And we're arriving with 12 firefighters. We have 2 Cape Cod-style homes on fire with a jet buried in one of them. It's one of the hardest situations that we faced, but thankfully having good mutual aid with the city of New Haven, and this was right on the city line, that we had really good working relationships with our mutual aid partners.
Wow. You post so many interesting videos on your Facebook page. Would you mind if I have you kind of give a live color commentary of one
Sure.
of your videos? Your brain is automatically processing the information, whether it's the smoke, whether it's the flames. Tell me what you're seeing in the video and how you're breaking it down.
I think it's first important to understand that as humans, our eyes are always going to focus on the brightest thing in front of you. So our eyes are always going to focus on the fire. But what the flames tell us is what has already happened. We need to focus on the smoke so we can understand what's going to happen. If you're going to choose tactics and deploy tactics, you need to get ahead of what's going on. So in this video here, I see a 3-story wood frame private dwelling, fire coming out of the 3rd floor, attic space, ground ladders in place. I see good volume, velocity, and density in the smoke. Because those are the things you want to look at: the volume, velocity, density. How turbulent is it, and where is the smoke? Where are your most dense areas? Where's the areas of the highest velocity? And then, not knowing this department, not knowing what else is going on, I have to ask, well, should we be flowing water exterior or should we be making an interior attack? But a 3rd floor stretch like this, I don't care what department, it's going to take a few minutes to put in place. If fire was showing out that window on arrival, there's nothing wrong with giving that a quick hit from the outside before you advance. Whether that's from a hand line, or whether that's from a ground monitor, whether that's from a mounted deck gun, right? Water into this environment is going to help because that's not going to be an easy stretch. And like we said, quote and key stakes, the wetter the better, and the quicker you can get water into that environment, the better it's going to be.
So you're grabbing a smoothbore.
Smoothbore, 1 3/4 for seconds. Flow that line into that window, steep, steady. You don't want to be moving it around seconds until you have a change. Then you have to ask, are we going to bring that hose line in, or can we stretch another line dry? In my department, we're going to stretch dry as far as we can go. I know that's not an accepted practice in a lot of places, right? But when we're running with just 1 or 2 making that stretch, we're going to stretch that line dry at least to the 1st floor, maybe to the 2nd floor. Once we have smoke, then we're going to mask up, we're going to call for water, and we're going to continue to push to complete extinguishment.
Well, I feel about 20% smarter than when I started this interview. PJ, this is awesome, and I can't wait to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for coming to Connecticut Fire Academy. We have a great academy that we love to share with everyone, and we appreciate the support of TFT on the fire service.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Curious to learn more about TFT nozzles? Check out the new sortable nozzle page at tft.com/shop.